Hey, welcome to A Dram of Diving. We are going to be discussing prerequisites and how to become an instructor in the scuba world. Right now, we got Ed and Kevin from South Jersey Scuba, and Nicole Zellick from Super Dive Scuba, James Mott from the Great Dive Podcast, and Mott Underwater. They're going to be joining us. I believe Nick Faza and maybe Alex from East Coast Divers are going to pop in pretty soon also. We'll see. And Tech kind of photobombed us last time, so I don't know if he'll jump in or not. But so we are going to be discussing that. As always, I want to thank everybody for the Patreon donations. I really, really appreciate that. That's how we can really put together some content and do some extra things. And we really appreciate some of the purchases of different items that we've thrown up there. So thank you very much. It really helps out producing content like this and basically making it so a bunch of people can argue on Facebook Live. So that's excellent. We are going to delve into the instructor thing in a second, and we are just going to discuss where people are coming from, zero to hero programs. The plan is an hour. I don't know. It might be 90 minutes. I've cut it off at 2 before. So let's see what ends up happening. So I'm going to bring in all of our guests. So come on in and say hi. There's Ed. What's up, Ed? And Mystery Kevin.
Kevin will be back eventually.
That works. And Nicole's here. Hello, Nicole.
Hello.
And James Mott. What's up, Jamesy?
Hey, what's going on there, gang?
Not much. Where's your vampire outfit? I figured that was going to make a
that was exclusive for our Monday night Zoom party. You had to attend that if you wanted to see the full vampire regalia.
I love it. But the pirate vampire, very, very nice. So I think a couple more people are going to join in with us, but essentially the general conversation is stemming around. I mean, James, you were talking about the Great Dive Podcast, and I think Tech mentioned it a little bit, and we've kind of been spitballing the idea in the past couple of weeks of, what is the minimum requirement to become an instructor? And I'm going to be working on a course director program with Ed next week and a half. So we're going to be running IDC down by him and discussing, who you let in, how you let in, how do you vet these people, or do you just kind of sign them in? So one of the ideas is, zero to hero. I was reading a thing on the internet that I posted it up. It was 60 days you've never dove before to being a dive professional. And what else did they say? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Zero experience, 60 days. You'll be a dive professional because you're going to be working with them in the warm Caribbean-esque type area. Wow, we got 46 people in here already. Holy crap. Jeez, people want to see a fight. Ed.
Yes, sir.
Alex is here too. I'm going to add Alex in. Hey, Alex.
How's it going, man?
Good. You?
Good.
We just gave a general rundown of everything. So I'm not sure if you heard or not, but you know the topic. So Ed, what's your thoughts on the current prerequisites to be an instructor?
So I have put tons of thought into this for you, Jason.
Oh, good.
So, and Kevin, when he shows back up, might agree with me, might not. I kind of think that it can be a little soft, but at the same time, we look at ourselves as part of the industry in more of a mentorship type capacity. So if you have good mentors going into the industry and into your dive master program, into your instructor IDC, you should come out okay in theory, but that's not always the case. So if you are a diver that has no solid mentorship going forward, you're really not going to develop into what you should or could be as an instructor, or even as a dive master for that point. You might be missing things. One thing that we try to look for as we develop is the professional's ability to recognize problems before they occur, and kind of notice those signs and symptoms from a diver showing some stress before anything elevates to obviously a bigger problem underwater. So for that, and then the other flip side to it is when we say, right, we're saying dive leader. Does that automatically mean professional instructor? Maybe somebody just wants to be a dive master. They just want to be kind of a mentor. It kind of leaves yourself up to that interpretation. I mean, I know quite a few divers who are not professional, not on that professional level, but they are very good at leading local dives, leading divers at Dutch Springs, or taking a diver off of New Jersey. Doesn't always have to be a professional, but you kind of look at that mentor status, and then you also realize that not everybody is made to be a leader. So some people are born to be just a diver. Other people are born to be just a dive master, and other people are born and move up the ranks to be an instructor, course director, or so forth. Right. So not everyone is going to be the CEO of the company or that big bad dive instructor. Right. So not everyone is born to be a leader. Sometimes you just got to know your role.
Fair enough. All right. So Nicole, what's your thought? I put you nice and big. So Nicole, what is your thought process on prerequisites to become an instructor? Are they adequate? Do we need to change them in any way, shape, or form? What's your thought process there?
So I don't think that the prerequisites are as relevant as the actual course, as the actual instructor course. Because I mean, I've seen instructor candidates with 3,000 dives do terribly in the IDC and instructor development course, and I've also seen candidates with 100 dives completely just crush it. But I do think that the way that the instructor trainer courses are set up, I think that they leave out a lot of important parts of becoming a scuba instructor. Because I know when I became one, it was all of a sudden I was thrust into this world and I was expected to do all these different roles that were not really sufficiently covered during training. Just like we mentioned on the last stream, like when you become a scuba instructor, now you are a gear salesman, you are a trip leader, and I mean, that course really, it touches upon these things, but maybe not in any meaningful way. So I really think that it's the course itself and not the prerequisites that we should be talking about.
Fair enough. That's good commentary there. Let's go to James Mott next.
Hey, what's
Hey.
up?
Not much. So let me recount that. You looked a little on the chopping block there. So thoughts on prerequisites going into the IDC. What's your thought on, do they need to be changed, or as Nicole said, is it more so in the IDC?
Well, I think Brando and I hit on a pretty good point last week in our show, that if the industry is going to keep the requirement for becoming an instructor 100 dives, only 100 dives, the focus should be that it's experience based, in that it should be 20 dives in at least 5 different environments to get to that 100-point mark. The fact that somebody can learn to dive in a very peaceful, easy shore entry in Bonaire, do their advanced class on an easy shore entry in Bonaire, knock out 100 dives in the exact same house reef of a resort, and have their credentials to become an instructor is just absurd. Other than if you're only going to teach people to dive in that one very location, but that's not how the world works, especially the world of scuba. People get that card and they want to start traveling the world. So it's so important for someone who's going to pass on a lineage of knowledge underwater, needs to have an extensive background and experience in different types of environments so that they can answer the questions that the students have, bring up questions that the students don't even know that they have, so that they have long-term success.
Excellent. Thank you for that one. All right. So Nick from East Coast Divers joined us. We're going to go to Alex next. We're saying hi to Nick. I think Nick's in his dorm room. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But Alex, thoughts on prerequisites and possibly into the IDC? I'm trying to give everybody a little time before we all start talking. So go ahead. What's your monologue there, Mr. Alex?
prerequisites are irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. First and foremost, the way the vast majority of the industry looks at prerequisites, they are self-verified by the diver for the most part. They can write in whatever they want. They show log pages. They say what they did. Maybe there's some cards that can show it, but a lot of them, like deep experience or night experience or nav experience or whatever it is, can be experience as opposed to being strictly a course that they had to take. And on top of that, you don't know where they took the course or who taught them the course or what was covered in the course, because there's so much variance in a lot of that stuff. For prerequisites, in my mind, to actually matter, industry-wide, things would have to change in the way that we handle dive logging. We'd have to either follow something more along the lines of what aviation does, where they're actually doing some sort of like true verification through logged hours, which right now is not the vast majority of what people are doing. And then beyond that too, you know, when you get beyond just the verification of that stuff, the courses that they're moving into, like have been mentioned before so far, can vary greatly, right? And that can make a really big difference as well as to where they're going and what they're trying to accomplish. So in my mind, that's, you know, probably the crux of the issue right now is the fact that anybody can kind of come in and say they've done anything, and without having a good verification process, or instead of having prerequisites, having like a kind of like qualification exam or entry level exam where you need to get into the water with the person teaching the class, or take an actual written exam or a combination of both to show that you are, you know, qualified and ready to be able to do the course. I just don't really understand prerequisites kind of to some degree.
Fair enough. Those are good points. You know, especially with like the 0 to Hero programs, I guess you're hitting those, you know, it's one single person taking you through a lot of that. So, Nick, your thoughts on prerequisites? Does it compete with Alex's opinion, or do you have what's your opinion there, bud?
I mean, I would probably line up pretty closely to, you know, Alex's comments, to be fair. I think, you know, the things to take into consideration are that, you know, the difficulty with prerequisites is that in order for them to work, you would have to have a standardized level of education across the board and a certain expectation of what a student coming into a professional program is actually going to be able to achieve in the water. And I think we could probably all agree that standardization of training and that level of quality is just not apparent currently in the industry, right? It's just not there. So to kind of move towards a level of, you know, qualification and testing, like just prior to the actual entry to the program itself, to make sure that candidates are up to snuff, you know, makes a lot more sense in my mind than taking somebody that might have gotten trained in Thailand versus somebody who might have gotten trained in, you know, New England versus California. Not to say that one is any better or worse, but they're different environments, and you can't expect somebody that has deep experience or deep training, you know, in Thailand or in the Caribbean to have the same sort of comfort level as somebody that has done it up here in New England or in the, you know, in the colder waters off the West Coast.
Fair enough. A lot to unbox, a lot to discuss here. A lot of different opinions and a lot of different tracks we can take this thing, which is, you know, how do you create solutions to this whole thing? So my question is, do we change the prerequisite? Do we push for change in prerequisites, or do we just leave them be? Because if they don't hold water, as some people were saying, and the instructor development course is really truly what we're looking at, do we change those prerequisites at all, or just kind of leave them be, or do we push for a change, or do we just leave them be and hope that the people running the IDC actually hold people accountable? Anybody have an opinion on that?
Well, I think that's going to be a hard one to do, but
yeah,
it's a brilliant idea on paper, but
right.
I don't see that, you know, coming at all, because I mean, the prerequisites are made. The prerequisites are known. They're on paper, so we know what we can officially bring somebody in at, and it's very clear that anybody that wants to become an instructor can walk into any IDC anywhere in the world. And there's not a single one of them that's going to say no.
Right.
So
if the check clears, you're in the class.
Yes. Quite literally, yeah. Yeah.
I liked what Alex was saying about how how everybody just pretty much logs their own dives, and it's very hard to verify how good somebody is. I think that one way to try to solve that is by checking people's watermanship, because I've seen people, like I said, with 100 dives that could do all of like the equipment exchange, and they can do those with pass those with flying colors. And I've seen people with 2,000 that can't. So maybe if you could throw them into the water and throw some tough problem-solving situations at them to see how comfortable they are, but also maybe you could get the references, like everybody's application would have to come with the recommendation of 3 people with at least one mentor, so that you have somebody who can sign off on them and say that this person is a good a good leader. That might be cool.
That's interesting. What's your guys' thought on a reference type system?
Yeah, what Nicole is talking about, I think, addresses a lot of issues. One of the biggest ones is, when you're saying, Jason, should we try and push for change? One of the big problems that I always think of is, we know how hard it is for SDI and SSI and PADI and RAID and insert, 4 letters here to all sit down together and to agree upon something, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about, because I'm not going to tell a PADI diver that they can't come into a pro class with me, right? And across the board for all those things, and unless they all agree on something, it's kind of up to us to do something independently to do that. And if we're doing our own verifications, then we don't have to wait for the agencies to do something. We can take care of that problem ourselves, and we can do it immediately, right? And it's honestly like, Jason, we've talked about this in technical class before to no end, and it's the same sort of thing, right? It's like, you don't know what you're getting. Your class can have like a grenade thrown in it if you have a real disaster of a student.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the whole idea of the minimum standards thing. And, that's minimum standards or minimums, as I think Danny calls them maximum standards. The best possible diver fits into this category. And then, that's what we allow for the best possible diver. But other people should do more type of stuff. Is anybody using a system? Nicole kind of said it as a watermanship skill type of thing. Is anybody using a pre-IDC meeting to make sure that people are meeting your requirements before you're starting them?
I think there's only so much you can do pre-IDC. I mean, especially if somebody's flying in or driving in, I mean, you only have a limited time with them. So it's one of those things and I think this is what you start seeing in some, at least up in here in the Northeast, is you really start vetting the people and you really know them even before they come into your IDC. Especially if, what?
No, we can hear him. Keep talking, Kev. You're good.
So, I mean, like, especially in this region, right? An instructor is teaching in 7 mil, 5 mil of wetsuit, if not a dry suit. It's a totally different standard than if you're in the Caribbean or if you're overseas in warm water, where you don't have to worry about trying to demonstrate with extra neoprene and really having your skills focused for that. So it's difficult to do a pre-assessment if the person isn't within your region or isn't within your locale.
Yeah, one thing I'm going to say too is, and I don't know if anybody's experiencing anything much different than us, but we don't deal with a large amount of people, at least, that aren't from the Northeast in professional programs. So that's something that I can't say right now that I have a bunch of firsthand experience with.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We'll see a little bit of I did my dive master someplace else and I'm coming to you, but also at the same time, they've barely led a single dive by themselves without someone that's guided them.
That was me, remember?
Yeah, that was you. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the 2 different issues that you have. I think a lot of the people on this panel today are a little bit jaded in coming from a harsher environment, and the antagonist here would be the instructor mills that are in the warm tropical locations where you can show up and do a 0 to hero program. I don't think anybody here today is doing that, where you could say, hey, I've never learned about scuba diving, but I saw this really cool show on Discovery last night. I want to be an instructor. What's it take? I don't think anyone here is running a program where I can put you through open water, advanced, rescue, dive master, instructor, and by December 1st, you too could be teaching for me.
Yeah.
I think, to be fair, it's not just the instructor mills that are at fault. I think that even the good Caribbean, I think even good dive professionals from crystal clear conditions, if you throw them into the Northeast, I think they will struggle no matter what.
I disagree. I think
maybe just being shocked, just being shocked, exposed to this new environment.
If you have the good foundational skills, it doesn't matter where you go, what you're wearing. I've seen people that have never been in a dry suit ever before that have beautiful body mechanics and skills and buoyancy control, and they understand and they've had the time to internalize it, go to a new environment, and you would have thought that they've been diving their entire lives. Versus I've also seen people that are instructors in this harsh environment that I would have been skeptical as to whether they even had an advanced open water career.
So then the question really comes up at that point then is it a matter of the fact that they got trained in warm water, or is it a matter of the actual level of training that they receive overall, right? Because Alex and I both did our instructor development stuff down in the Keys. And I'll tell you right now that we had no problem moving back. When I first moved to Boston, I got straight in the water, was able to teach around here. It wasn't difficult with the 7 mil. It picked right up pretty quickly. But we were in the water every day for a 14-week program down in the Caribbean, and to the point where, we were swimming every day. We were having skills drilled into us every day. And it was a quote-unquote instructor mill, but still put us both into the industry where we're still here 15 years later. So I don't think you can just ride instructor mills. I think it comes down to what is the program that they're running, and is it focused on diver development, or is it just focused on learning X 4-letter agency's system and being a billboard for that particular agency when they're out there in the field, or can they do their job properly?
There's also aspects that just are outside of people's control, right? Like if you're learning how to be an instructor in a place that literally always has 100 foot of visibility, you can't expect that person, no matter where they go, to be comfortable in low visibility, right? And it doesn't mean that they're a bad instructor. It just means you got to go out and get comfortable in low visibility and learn how it works in this environment. You can become a good instructor in Bonaire. You just can't then immediately go to New England and be like, oh, I can do this here now too, right? There's going to be a learning curve when that happens.
I think it goes both ways, actually. And I say this because I did my dive master in the Caribbean, and then I did my instructor here in the Northeast. And I think that both environments have unique sets of problems. I think that for one, going from being a Caribbean diver to coming here, all of a sudden now you have to make your ratios much smaller. Your supervision has to be on point, maybe in a way that it wasn't before. But if you come from here and you go to the Caribbean and you work at a resort that has a high turnover, and these divers who are vacationing and they don't really care so much about the course, but now you have to supervise 4 DSDs at a time. I know that's kind of it was unexpected for me to work somewhere where now I have 8 beginner divers who have no idea what they're doing in the Caribbean, because if you get comfortable diving with the competent Northeast divers who are, I don't know. I think that both environments have unique challenges.
I think that's right.
The issue that, I think this is moving into, which isn't where the title of the show really was designed. It's moving into who's a better instructor, a Northeastern, a Northeast instructor or a Caribbean instructor. But the focus of what this was supposed to be is 100 dives of experience really going to validate you as being able to educate the future of the diving public?
So James, how do you validate those 100 dives, right? What are those? Are those dives where people just jump into the water, bounce dive, 15 minutes at a time with a 10-minute surface interval and just start racking shit up?
Well, they do. They count 50. They count half their pool dives as dives when they're filling out their logbook. So immediately, if you say you've got 100 dives, I know that's probably 25 to 30.
Well, maybe the question is what makes a good instructor? Right? No, not which ones are better, but what makes a good instructor. And I've seen instructors that are good at different things. So when we talk about verification, or when we talk about prerequisites, what are we really looking for? Like, what kind of people do we want to accept into our program? And I think Alex said that they have to have great problem solving capabilities. I think that's the important question. It's not how many dives, but what do we want out of these candidates?
So I think we have to look at it as what's our standard that we're looking for? Are we looking for quantity, which is the 100 dives, or are we looking for the quality of their experience?
Right.
Well, I think it's in the standards for, they suggest 100 dives. They have their breakdown for advanced open water rescue and varying your specialty selection too. So, I mean, if that's there, in theory, if they have kind of a variety of their dive experience, that's best case scenario. Or, in our case too, if we try to, build your team and you build up those divers and your dive masters and your instructors through, through your own shop or your group, you can kind of help build those into the dive leaders that you want to have. And that expands to helping them get their opportunities to get those experiences in. The Caribbean diver, it's not their fault that they're not always dealing with limited viz, cold water, but, they want us to teach snorkel classes, and we're not doing that too often up here, but we're supposed to be able to do that to be able to train down in the Caribbean, but they don't make them do a dry suit class. So it kind of doesn't really go both ways for the cold water crew, but we got to build the best that we can.
Exactly. So I like what Brock put up here that on being coached on how to cheat the system. I didn't see that article. Brock, if you have a link to that, go ahead and throw that up there. It'd be very interesting to see that. And then, where did it go? Ross, consider this for a moment. I'm done, and then I'm done. There are instructors out there that have never been out of Dutch Springs, but that's a rec dive and a low vis dive and a cold water dive. All of those can be found in Dutch Springs. So why would you need to go anyplace else, Ross?
And I think the argument here, Jason, that I would make is we're all expecting way too much out of people who come out of instructor courses. I think that's really the end result here, because you can't expect everybody to get all of the experience. Just like we always tell people, when you come out of an open water course, it's a license to continue to learn. It really should be the same thing. To take somebody out of an instructor course and just throw them out and be like, oh, you have a card, you can teach. I'm not sure there's many people here that would argue that that's reasonable.
Right. So that leads towards the mentoring type programs and keeping somebody under your mentorship and tutelage afterwards.
Yes and no, right? Because, the question is, if you're producing professionals, for yourself locally, then yes, that would make sense. Like when we produce professionals for ECD, they 100% stay under a mentorship program, and we kind of, nurture them and keep them under our wing. But if we're creating instructors for export, and people who actually want to travel, then, then the question becomes, what is your baseline set of standards for an individual that you can say, when I hand this card over to this person, I have trust and faith that when they go to X location, they will be able to use prudent judgment, be able to plan accordingly for their new environments, and understand when and where they might be out of their element, and take the time to explore those particular areas and gain experience before putting students in the water. Because for me, that's my baseline, right? Is like, are you safe? Do you have good group control? And can you critically think regarding a scenario, a situation, or a dive site? Because if you can do most of those things, and then the fundamentals and the foundation of how to give an academic or a pool or an open water presentation, that doesn't change. Like, that's all pretty bog standard fundamental stuff. The stuff that's much harder to teach is that critical thinking, right? So at least for me, that baseline has to be, I'm not trying to train the best instructor that's ever been trained in the whole wide world, because it's just simply not possible in a single instructor development program. I'm just trying to train somebody that is safe and can do all of those other criteria, so that I can know that when I let them out into the wild, they'll be able to, make me proud and also keep people safe and train good divers.
I think what Nick says is fantastic. I don't see that the product that comes out from most of the IDCs out there, I don't think those candidates have had the intimate relationship that Nick gives to his students, where you've been guided in a really smart way like that. That makes wonderful sense. What I do see every single weekend at every single training place I've ever been to is a mass amount of instructors on their knees, standing on the bottom, walking on the bottom, certifying more and more students that have held that negatively buoyant, standing on the bottom instructor as the scuba god.
Yeah, but I see that in 50% of the shops I go everywhere, if not more.
So is that not the question that we're trying to answer here?
Well, just in the question between instructor mills and independent shops training instructors, I mean, a lot of the scenarios that you were just describing, I think, are true across the board.
So let me ask you this:
is that not the problem?
Oh no, I think it definitely is the problem, but I don't think it necessarily hits on it's a problem necessarily with instructor mills. I think it's a problem in the industry.
Sure, you've got a great ability to judge student safety. You've got a great ability to make sure you don't lose anybody, but you're a shit example of what a diver should be in the water. What purpose do you have being an instructor? You've failed on the most fundamental thing, which is being a good diver first and foremost.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think all 6 of our squares agree that the people that come out of IDCs are usually not ready. That's what I'm hearing from all of you, is that that the training is inadequate, and I think that it's one size.
I wouldn't say that. I think there's a lot of people that come out that are prepared.
Yeah, and I might ask the question.
I'm sorry to mischaracterize what you were saying. What I was going to say was that I think that there's a one size fits all model in these instructor courses, and I don't think that they prepare candidates. I heard people talk about intimate mentorship, and I think that this one size, that the whole structure of an instructor development program, that's set up to be like an instructor mill, because you have these qualifications. Once you ace them, then you move on. But what if we treated it like a college credit system, where let's say I'm interested in becoming an instructor, so I have the basics. I have to do my watermanship skills. I have to do my student supervision skills. But maybe I want to plan dive trips for a living. And maybe my colleague wants to service gear for a living and work in a dive shop. I think that these programs, they're not. I think that when you come out and you're ready to be in the big world of dive business, I don't think that one size fits all program prepares you. So
Nicole, are you making the comment for, say, somebody gets an instructor card and says, I've specialized in dive travel and clear water and high current in this?
You know what? Maybe, because what if we treated it the way we're talking about 100 dives being a prerequisite for something, but I don't, 100 dives doesn't mean anything to me. But if I saw that somebody had a specialty in low visibility diving, and maybe, was specialized in, low visibility diving, for example, then I would know that they maybe can work in the Northeast. But if they only have beautiful Caribbean, but they can supervise, their supervision credits are really high, maybe they're more.
Are you talking about a specialty card in low visibility diving, or a specialty of experience?
I'm talking about a better.
I think is what we're talking about.
Excuse me?
Because I think those are two different.
I'm thinking of the instructor program being longer, and I wish that it wasn't one size fits all. I wish that you could have mandatory courses that you have to take, like dive physics and dive theory, and then maybe some electives. But then you get to build these personal relationships with your mentors in those specialty areas.
Why is that not possible right now?
I mean, I just thought of it, and now I'm going to implement it in my business.
If I went to welding school, I'm not going to be teaching welding after I've welded, 200 pieces of metal together to make 100 pieces.
But diving is not welding, my friend. Diving is so diverse.
Well, yes. So
that's the point.
It should be even more. I mean, diving is a trade, not much different than a lot of trades out there. You're not going to be teaching commercial diving after doing, putting 100 bolts on screws in blackout water. I mean, it takes a lot. It's been, that area of diving requires you to have tons of experience before they give you the ability to teach others. And that's all I'm saying. A trade school, like becoming an electrician or a welder or a sheet metal worker, where you pick the trade, a plumber. I mean, water flows through. How hard can it be? Sure, I can fix 100 toilets. I should be able to teach plumbing. No, you can't. It's respected so much more than diving. You have a real career that pays you real money. Thank you.
Scuba should be just like that.
Real money. Like it doesn't cost you to teach it doesn't cost you like it does to teach a scuba class.
That should be what scuba is.
We've given that away. We've made it so easy.
But it shouldn't be like that. We're here to create a new future here. We're on this show so people can hear us and become inspired.
That's actually, I was going to say all 11 people, but apparently all 60 people that are listening to us currently.
So let me ask you this then, like on that same track, right? Then if the idea is to hold, higher levels of experience and to be able to have that, does that then not bring into question the standard of training across the board at a recreational level, and then also the standard of training, or at least the maintenance of knowledge of certain instructor trainers within the industry? Like, does an instructor trainer that hasn't taught a class within, let's say, 5 years have any business whatsoever teaching another instructor class, like without any kind? And what prereqs do you mandate upon that individual to make sure that they're still the bleeding edge of training and they're still on top of their skills? Because we all know that it comes top down, right? Like shitty students are made by shitty instructors, and shitty instructors are made by shitty instructor trainers and signed off by shitty ICs, right? So like, where do you draw that line? Like, how do you start that progress of fixing it from the top and then starting to filter it down? Because you're never going to fix it from the bottom. There's too many people out there to try to demand that. It has to be narrow and filtered down.
The question of, is 100 dives enough to give that person and to become a candidate? And I think the top of what you're saying is, the top is saying, yeah, knock out 30 pool dives and 50 dives at the exact same place where you did your training, and a couple more here and there, and sure, you can teach too. All it takes is you pay your dues and you sign up with us and you're good to go.
Yeah, that's essentially the program that I essentially came from. I was talking about it tonight with a couple people there in the shop. I did 70 dives probably in Skinny Atlas Marina. I did 4 in North Carolina. I did 4 in Aruba, and then I made up the rest of them because I didn't know the prerequisite was 100, and I was already in Key Largo. So I needed to write. And there's the rub. I'm sure that I did those dives at some point in time. I probably didn't log them, and that was perfectly acceptable, and everybody was down with it. And then if I wanted to, I could have stayed the next week and become an instructor in all the different specialty areas if I stayed another week.
And that's my argument, that like it doesn't matter, right? The prerequisites do not matter because anybody can say whatever the hell they want.
Right.
So I don't even know why we're still arguing about what the number is, because the number could be a fucking sorry.
Oh my God! He said the F word. Oh my
Jeez,
God!
oh, God.
I'm-
You're off the
I'm
lead.
out.
First one to drop a F-bomb.
Christ.
Oh.
Welcome to the show, Alex.
I'm real hot right now.
I think a lot of it comes down to, so if I'm looking, and I know Jason knows exactly where I'm going on this one,
He pulled up the standards.
is if I'm looking at the WRSTC for minimum course content for a recreational scuba instructor cert, it's 9 pages, of which 1 page is dedicated to scope and purpose, which is pretty much BS, just written in there. And then you get definitions on page 2. And you know what? Half of this is like stuff that, I don't know, I mean, like an advanced student could do and then jump into this class if they didn't say, 60 dives. But then at the same time, compared to a lot of other quote unquote trades and other businesses that require certification, the scuba definitions are very lax, very, very loosely interpretable. So, I mean, like as Brock just says, trades like plumbing, electrical, or sheet metal take 7,000 hours, yet 100 dives. And nobody has any definition of what a dive really is.
Right. And I don't think 100 dives is completely
It's
unreasonable if they have a varied. I don't think 100 dives is totally unreasonable if it's a varied environment and everything like that. And then, I mean, 2 things. One, I feel like when we are developing our instructors and such, what was the old definition when they try to define porn? It was like, you know it when you see it. I feel like with our instructors, you kind of know when they're starting to get it. And if they're still missing the same things over and over and over again, that's a problem. And you can only correct the diver so many times before maybe this isn't what you really need to be doing.
Wait, what was the reference you just used on how you knew?
You know.
Was there a couch involved?
Wow.
Jason's been looking for a couch. Yeah, that's a Supreme Court somewhere. And then he made me miss my second point. I forget now. Way to
That's
go.
all right. I've got a
Killing
surprise
me.
for James anyways.
Uh-oh.
Oh, he's on the couch.
Danny's in.
Danny's here.
I think the other part we have to talk
Okay,
about also.
I guess I should dive into the whiskey finally now. I guess.
Yeah, why you can't say that? Jesus Christ.
I think the other part
There we go. Oh shit.
I think the other part we have to understand here is for all of us on this screen right now, we take a lot of pride in our students. And for us, time and money invested into our student really isn't a limiting factor. But you look at some of these other places where, okay, you know, a student's paying for a hotel, paying for every airfare, paying for every boat, everything. Then all of a sudden, the pressure ratchets up to, okay, you know what? We got to try and get this student through as fast as we can, this candidate through. And sometimes the hardest thing for a lot of people to do is to say no, that, hey, you're not ready for this.
I remember my second point too, because we're talking about bringing divers up, but I forget who it was that mentioned it can be from the top down. Nicole was at the same instructor exam weekend I was, and
We both
There was-
wore matching Batman outfits, by the way.
she
Accidentally.
she copied mine. But no, I think from the top down, I mean, there's a very kind of simple way that there's kind of checking divers off. As far as if they think that like you perform one skill, that means you can perform all the skills.
Right.
And then you can correct one problem that somebody told this fake diver to do. That means you can now correct all problems. Again, is it kind of a money thing? Like you said, the check cleared, they're gonna let you go. I barely remember anybody else's name that was in my instructor exam other than I think Nicole, because she's still active. But there was some that could barely even brief, and I'm pretty sure that everybody passed that weekend.
That's true. And I just wanted to say about those role-playing victims, that is so unrealistic and such a bad way to train actual problems. I don't know if you guys like role play, but I do a lot of role play in my scuba classes, especially with my dive
scuba.
master scuba classes.
Scuba class.
Ed likes role play. Ed particularly enjoys the role play.
Jason, easy.
Wait for the sign up.
James Mott's buoyancy class and role playing.
Yeah, but how we totally need better, less boring courses. And just to Nick's point, what he was saying is, I think Nick was asking whether or not we have the power to actually influence anybody. We're just little us, and can we influence like the RSTC standards? But we have 60 people watching, and I think it begins, if you guys have your own dive businesses, it starts with your own shop, and create a buzz and tell people how much you pride yourself on creating the best instructor candidates, and the industry will have to catch up. Or else it will suffer. So I think it just starts with ourselves, with like all 6 or 7 of us going back and just making positive changes in our own businesses and all the people watching us.
I'd go with we got 7.5. Kevin counts for half if you've met him. It's a half, yeah, definitely a half. He's on a stool right now, that's why he's equal to Ed. So
I'm standing.
Yeah. I'm gonna regret this, but I see that Danny's got a pen, and I believe that Danny's probably written some things down.
Please.
Oh, holy hell, Danny! Hi, Danny.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, holy.
I got to tell you, I got to be honest. I was actually listening to this entire broadcast on my couch, drinking my tea. I just bored out of my mind. You guys are all agreeing with each other. I think we got to spice things up here.
That's where you came in.
Well, this time you didn't say anything silly that everybody jumped on. So now I got to. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to be the guy who says that I think that our prerequisites and our instructor courses are actually doing a very good job of what they're supposed to do and creating brand new instructors. I think that the prerequisites of a course just allow somebody to take it. You still have to do your job as the instructor and teach the course. So it's up to the student to actually pass it. So if they take your course, they don't pass it, oh well, that's it. So it doesn't matter if they have 100 dives, 300 dives, 3,000 dives, you're still the one there that has to pass them or not. So to have these kind of meetings or pre-dive or pre-course kind of, hey, should you belong in my class? Are you good enough to be in my presence kind of courses, I think are nonsense. I think people are paying for the courses that they're paying for. They're paying you to do your job, and you should teach them the course. If they don't pass it, that's up to them.
It's the passing it at the end that's the issue. It is there's a good number of people that if you paid for it, you pass it.
Well, all right, and that's a problem with anybody in any industry.
That is the.
And Danny, what's an acceptable?
Hold on. Hey, fellas, you had 45 minutes. Let me get my piece out, and then you guys. All right. So, like I said, anyone can take the class, and it's up to the instructor trainer rather, or instructor if they're doing a dive master or assistant instructor course, to actually hold up the standards of, hey, do you pass? Should you be an instructor? Should you be a dive master? And it's up to them. And I think that we're forgetting that we're a very small minority of people talking. There is 7.5 people here right now. I do, because I did fart prior to going out to this call. So we're seeing such a very small number of people. Even James, who's at the training quarries every single weekend, and seeing massive amounts of people walking along the bottom as if they're hard hat divers. He's seeing this. He's still seeing a very small, very, very small slice of people. You're not seeing the millions of divers that are diving out in the world. So to say that the vast majority of people are terrible, you're just pulling that number out of your butt. The other thing.
That's not a pull out of the butt.
Well, I mean, yeah, when you're talking statistically in a big, vast majority of people, yeah, of course it is. Because I could say the vast majority of divers I see in the Northeast are fantastic. But the divers you're seeing where you are, you could be like, no, all the majority of divers are terrible. And I think that we're only seeing
the majority of divers I see wear blue fins. That doesn't mean shit, though.
What? I didn't get the first part.
When you see there's 5 training platforms at a training location, and 5 out of the 5 of them have instructors standing on the platform, walking from student to student to teach class. And you can go to any training location in the world, and you're going to see that.
Listen, you can't qualify it because you can't actually say that that's actually happening on every single dive platform and everywhere around the world. So the number that you're pulling that's saying that the vast majority of divers are still bad is really pulling it out of your butt. You have no.
What you can do to validate that though is you can look at the attrition rate within diving, right? Like you can actually look at the statistics published, by the amount of divers that, let's say, are still active within 3 years of their initial certification. And the last time I checked, it was an over 80% attrition rate within 3 years of like people just dropping out of the sport. And whose fault is that? Like, did they just try it and not like it, or did they try it and have really shitty instruction and then be like, oh, I'm not so good at diving and it's kind of expensive. This isn't the sport for me, knowing that it's not actually their fault. If they'd actually had appropriate instruction to start with, they would have been more confident and comfortable in the water, leading to a much more enjoyable experience and a lifelong passion for diving and being in the ocean and in the water in general. Right? Those are numbers that you can measure.
Thank you, Nick. And this is nothing new. I mean, this is a
hold on a second.
Hearing for decades.
James, let me respond to Nick real quick. I got 2 points to that. One, let's see what the attrition rate is on every other sport or every other hobby before we can say that scuba is down or it's based off of training or what have you. Scuba is expensive. Scuba takes time. Just cleaning your gear after a dive if you're not one of these terrible people that are diving in fresh water all the time.
How can you do a certification class in 1 weekend then? If just cleaning your gear up takes so much time.
Ooh.
Wait, I'm sorry, I missed it again. What was that, James? You keep cutting in and out.
And then how can we teach somebody to scuba dive in 1 weekend if just cleaning your gear alone takes so much time to learn how to do properly?
I don't know where you're getting at. So, Nick, my second point is going to be there. So, as I said before, we want to get into we have to look at what other sports are doing, other hobbies are doing. So we could say the same thing could be said about hang gliding or paintballing. People get into it, they spend a lot of money doing it, and then they stop doing it after so long. That has nothing to do with the training they got or any of these sports. So we don't know. We don't actually know what these numbers actually mean.
That's true. I would agree with that, right? Because you can't really analyze that data. I mean, you can obviously look at the data within itself, but you can't compare it to other sports unless we also have that the data to stand beside it and actually do a comparison.
But does it really matter? But does it really matter all that much? Because we just want more people we want a lower attrition rate, right? So I can give a shit whether.
And I also think that's a very valid mission, right? Like regardless of what the other sports are doing, maybe we're average. Maybe all the other sports have a very similar attrition rate. That could totally be the case. I took up climbing, bought a harness and a pair of shoes, climbed for like a year, and then just got bored and stopped. Right. And it wasn't anything to do with the training. It's just about the opportunities that were available to me, locally, which is a whole nother discussion, right, that we could get into.
Right.
But, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to strive for, a lower attrition rate and getting more people, committed. And I definitely see that and have seen that in New England and at least in Massachusetts, from my own personal view in the last, let's say 5 years, the local community has definitely grown compared to 15 years ago, and the reason being is that there's definitely been more young, more influential, instructors and professionals within the area that are more dedicated to the quality of their product compared to, quick in and out programs where, people get certified in a weekend. And this feedback also comes from just general conversations that I have with people, out in the street, because I'm a very boring individual. I don't really have a lot to talk about other than diving. It's quite fucking sad, to be perfectly honest with you. So when I bring it up and we talk about diving, the amount of responses that I get of, well, I tried that once, but, New England diving sucks. Why? Like, what happened during that program? Like, what happened during your training? And a lot of us like, well, it was cold, or it was low visibility, or like I didn't really feel very comfortable, or we did it in a weekend. Right? And it's the same repetitive excuses of people dropping out. And for me, that comes back down to the instructor. Did you provide an appropriate experience for your candidate or your student, or did you not? Or were you just there for the paycheck? Because if you're just there for the paycheck, you're in the wrong fucking business to be doing things for just the paycheck. Right? This sport doesn't pay. I wish it did, but it doesn't. Right? That's why my kitchen looks like a dorm room. Right?
But you make some damn good meals in that dorm room. I've seen them.
So, I mean, to come back to Jason's point, I think striving for a higher quality of student and actually putting the effort in, and it being about the passion of providing a quality experience and producing quality and comfortable divers is absolutely paramount. But the question for the group then is how do we get there? How do you take the individual that just does it over a weekend, and how do you take that individual and you convert them into somebody that is an ambassador for the sport? Because that, in my mind, is my definition of a professional, right? If you just want to become an instructor for the card, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. If you want to be an instructor because you want to be an ambassador for the sport and you want to share that passion and you have that dedication to making people quality and solid in the water and creating lifelong divers, now you're in the right mindset. You've got the right philosophy.
I don't think it's fair to say.
And Nick, that what does it take that you're asking is, in my opinion, it takes hard work. And if it's easy, it's not going to be worthwhile in the end. If it's easy and it's simple and it's done in 2 days, like I didn't even work at it.
Right.
But you can take that all the way back to prerequisites for instructors and
certified for paintball. And I don't know what kind of certification you needed to go, rock climbing to get all your stuff, but like it's something you did over a weekend and then fell out of it. But if it took time, it took blood, sweat, and tears, and you really had to earn it. When they give it out to any and everybody for the lowest common denominator of work, sure, you're gonna find something more exciting. It's not unlikely that's gonna.
I mean, you're right. It has no value when the training is so little and it's so uninvolved. It creates no inherent value, and people want value. They want something that they can feel like they're involved in and dedicated to. You're 100% right, and you're right. My climbing class was a two-hour thing at a climbing gym, and it was like, cool. Here you go. Here's a sweet harness you should buy. And I'm a sucker for marketing, so I bought it. You're right. And
I mean, imagine you sat there and the instructor taught you like the philosophy of the rock and really brought you in like your whole entire heart and soul into.
It would have been a different experience.
Can I ask you?
That's what I'm saying with the instructor prerequisite type stuff is we should have better instructors coming in and going out. I agree with the fact that IDCs should be better taught, but cherry picking a little bit better instructor candidate would make it, and especially coming from dive master or whatever, professional level, wherever you want to put this barrier in, but you're getting better dive masters, better instructors, which then care, like Nick was saying, if it's easy in, it's going to be easy out, shit in, shit out. Since Alex cursed, I feel like I could too. So if you got better instructors, then what ends up happening is that you create better open water students, hopefully that people that care a little bit more and not people that are in it for 3 years because they did a 0 to hero and they just want to be done with the sport. They thought it was going to be cool.
Listen, you got a couple problems here. One is that what I've seen happen in the Northeast, specifically in the New York boats, the New Jersey boats, 10, 15 years ago, you couldn't get on a boat, or you didn't want to go down a boat because the attitude out here was so horrendous. If you weren't one of the in crowd, you didn't enjoy yourself. You had to go through a lot of work. You had to go through a lot of hazing just to be allowed onto these boats or to feel comfortable on them. And we did it to ourselves as an industry in this area where we have 4 or 2 wreck boats now on Long Island. Jersey, there's down to 3 or 4. And we did this to ourselves. And we did it to ourselves because those divers there had that elitist attitude that I think that you guys are all displaying, and we all kind of are responsible for it, and we do it at a certain time. When we have prerequisites for courses, who are you, Jason? And it's for your company, so you can say whatever you want. But who are you to say, no, this person's going to be good before they even take your course? I said, you're setting somebody up to fail even before they even try.
So
I think you're setting somebody up to succeed before they even try.
I agree. Yeah, I'm with Alex on that, right?
You guys are still forgetting, and this is I try to make this point of.
Were the people getting hazed because they were legitimately not ready?
There's too many people talking. I don't know what's happening.
I was talking. All right. So going back to it, I was trying to make this point a bunch of podcasts back. Your job is to teach the class, right? their student's going to show up. They're there to do it. So whether you think that they're going to be the straight A student or the straight C student, they're there to learn. Your job is to teach them. So why don't you do your job and just do it? Give them the course that they paid for.
So I've taught a lot of instructors, and I've never taught 2 instructor classes that were the same, that the students had the same level of needs as any other class that I've taught. And the reason why is because they come at a lot of different levels. And one of the things that I found is the higher the level that the whole majority comes in at, the better a course I can teach because I can drive them higher. If you let anybody come in, they're going to hold other people back. They're going to waste their time. They're going to waste your time. They're going to waste other students' time. It's one of those things that happens, right?
So you're saying
people to a higher level is a good thing.
To do your job well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To do the job better, right? Like I can take any group of students and I can train them to become instructors, right? And it's just going to matter on the amount of time it's going to take for each of those individuals. But if you start with a certain level of experience, a certain level of competency, there's no argument that you're going to be able to take those individuals, push them, and excel them to a better level, creating a better product.
I think that's what they're there for.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Danny on this one. Surprisingly, I think that.
No, I changed my mind, guys. I changed my mind.
I know it's weird if you agree with Danny, right?
Let me just
All right.
Everything Nicole says is wrong.
I'm about to agree with you. I think.
I'm sorry. What were you saying?
I think we're focusing on the students over here, and I'm continuing to say that that's not. A student comes to you and they pay you, and you're the one that's supposed to certify them. It doesn't matter where they're at. If you're a really good instructor, you could be like Rumpelstiltskin and spin shit into gold. Because
oh my god, saying shit again.
I thought no, but it is true because I have worked with disaster divers and I have turned them. I have worked very hard on them, and if it really is the quality of your program and not the quality of the divers coming in, because you want to welcome everyone. You want to welcome the really crappy divers because you want them to come to your school and become better.
Nicole, why do you have
everybody else if they're not there?
Why do I what?
Do you want to bring them in at the same level as everybody else if they're not there?
No, if there's a crappy student because maybe they took Danny's course, I'll welcome. I'm kidding, Danny. No, but I'm kidding. No, but not everybody can be a student of Danny's, right? Like not everybody can be an amazing student. And I have had really terrible students sign up for a dive master course, and they were in the same course and it really depended on me and not on them.
Nicole, did you know they were bad when they started?
When I started, I was like, "Oh boy, who gave you your cards?" And they were like, "Oh, I they basically did the 0 to hero and recreational status, but they wanted to be a dive master." So then
did you separate them out and told them they need remediation and they start the program later on?
Well, my dive master courses aren't one size fits all, so I don't do like 2 weekends and you become a dive master. Everybody goes at their own pace, and you kind of, I think that that's the way to do it. You only pass them. If it takes them a little bit of time, that's great. If it takes them a long time, you still have to work.
See, I pre-screen them. I say, all right, we're gonna go do a dive. We're gonna see what your skills are like. We're gonna sit down on the couches. That's right, the couches. And we're going to sit down on the couch. Back to the couches. We're going to sit down on the couches. We're going to have a beer or a whiskey or whatever, and we're going to discuss why you want to do this and how this is going to go before you even pay me any money, because I'm not taking your money to just if you're not going to complete not necessarily complete the program, but if it's not going to be something you truly want, there are plenty of other avenues you'll enjoy more, and there's a different direction you should go in.
But just because they're bad at it doesn't mean they don't want it.
That's why we pre-screen it.
That doesn't mean they should get it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean just because they're bad at it doesn't mean that they don't want it, but it also doesn't mean that they have any business whatsoever being in a program with other individuals that are at a higher level, right? Like you don't take a first-year residency student, in a hospital and then suddenly throw them into surgery, put them through 10 days of training, and then make them a fucking surgeon. That's not how that works. It takes experience, and if they're not ready, they have to repeat those classes. Like just allowing anybody to enter into a professional program and hope that they catch up because you're that instructor trainer that can teach anybody is actually a little arrogant in my regards.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, it's your job to make them. That's what they're paying you for.
Yeah, no,
to
but they're
teach
not.
them
They're
that.
not paying me to take an instructor class. They're paying me to turn them into a professional, but they have to have a certain set of.
They did open water. They did advanced. Then they did rescue.
That's the part that you're missing, Nicole. And in this part, I actually agree 100% with Danny in that.
I'm agreeing with him too.
With the assumption, with the caveat that they are. I know if you can believe this shit. Taking the assumption and the caveat that they are truly ready for that step, yeah, you should be able to teach anybody, and some people are going to have different problems than others do. I don't think that's the point of what we are here trying to discuss today and fix.
What are you talking about?
What are we talking about?
It's going back and forth because everybody said prerequisites are shit. So, and they aren't valid for anything. So now we've gone into like, is it the IDC? Is it the student? And then every once in a while we try to bring it back to the prerequisites, and then we go off on a different tangent. It's okay.
You should have like a little switchboard so you can push a button for who gets to talk at any point and be like a real mediator.
Yeah, I'm working on that. I don't know exactly how this thing's
I'm gonna raise my hand. I'm gonna do the right thing.
It's funny. It's funny because just sitting here as Silent Bob right now.
Yeah, you guys need to muscle in more.
Oh,
Anybody else got anything to say?
Well, here's what it sounds like is like we keep trying to talk about the standards, but we can't talk about the standards because the standards don't even cover what we as instructor trainers want to see out of a student. They just don't cover it.
No, it's exactly what I want to see out of a student. I want them to meet the standard.
Which is?
The standard.
The standard that's written. I want them to see it. I want to see the student to get to that level. I don't.
So is it
standards? They become the minimum requirement. They're the maximum requirement.
It is not a minimum requirement, and this is
what standards are.
So then, does that mean that the minimum standard requirements need to?
I'm just gonna stop everybody right here.
Beefed up?
I'm gonna. You know what, Jason? Mute everybody. I got this. All right.
All right. Wait, we're gonna try this. Ready? Everybody, avert your eyes for a second. I'm putting Danny solo.
All right. Here we go.
You got a haircut.
Is that guitar?
We got a haircut from the last time we talked.
Yeah.
All right. I brought this up on the. I don't even remember what topic we're talking about anymore with Jason. But it all seems like the same exact thing. So the issue is that everybody looks at minimum standards as that, minimum standards. And I completely disagree. They're not minimum standards. If they were minimum standards, then they would be a lot easier for your worst student to pass a class. I look at it as you have a DECO course. The DECO course is 4 dives. That's the minimum standard, is 4 dives. I've never had a student of mine pass a DECO class in 4 dives because they weren't the best student in the world. That's what those standards are for the absolute best student to do this in the minimum amount of time and minimum amount of everything they have to do. It's not for the minimum student. Those minimum standards for the majority of divers are a hard class if you just hold them up to it. We want to sit here and pound our chest saying we're such fantastic instructors because we go above and beyond the standard, which I think is nonsense. If you just do the standard, if you actually hold people to the standard, whatever it is, whatever class it is, you'll be a fantastic instructor. But you guys all want to sit here and you want to, again, pound your chest to say, oh my God, we're so amazing because we go above standards. You probably don't even know what the standards are in the first place. And that's it. That's my spiel.
You went real for a minute. You break character there for a second, Danny?
It's so annoying. It's so aggravating. Minimum standards, minimum standards, minimum standards. You know what? You take one of these, you're that amazing of an instructor, student, and actually pass them in those exact minimum standards. You have a tech student, you have a CCR student, good luck. I can't do it. I know Jason can't do it. I think tons of other tech instructors who just can't do it. Even with an IDC, I can't get through in the minimum amount of time that they're telling me. So they're not minimum standards. Or I'm just
there's hundreds of instructor trainers out there that are getting through at a minimum.
No, maybe they're really.
That's why we go back to the point that we had earlier. This is why you still see at every training location hordes of students in a dip and dunk program where the students are walking along the bottom still today because of that very thing. You're an exception. All of us here are exceptions.
You wouldn't go that far. You haven't dove with any of us.
Big majority.
Me in the water.
Which is why you have people coming in, like every one of these people that are here today. They said, I've got people coming into me at the dive master level that Nicole, how did you even get your first cards?
Yeah, so I'm a little confused.
Why is that still existing in 2020? We were talking about this in 1995. Why is this still going on?
Along with Nitrox.
Talking about a 1995. You're old, man.
I am.
Wait, so Danny, one of the things that I was hearing was when you were talking about that, you were saying teach to the standards, but the minimum standards oftentimes aren't good enough.
No, you misunderstood me. I didn't say that the minimum standards aren't good enough. They're not minimum standards. I think they're the standard. When you look at a standard on a piece of paper,
Sure.
and you say, all right, what student is going to pass this? It's going to be the best student in the world or the worst student in the world? Who's going to pass that going by the standards, duration, hours, and stuff like that? Which student passes? Alex, go ahead. You can answer.
Which student passes what?
Look at take any course. Let's take a deco procedures. Right?
Danny, I'm pretty sure it's a bell curve, and the agency's expecting that the median student is going to pass within that normal time frame and standard. They're not expecting it to be the best student. They're expecting it that the majority of people should be able to pass that standard with this unreasonable amount of time.
That's not how they write them. They write them where the absolute best case scenario possible will pass with this standard.
Thank you. So they're not minimum standards.
But that is exactly what a minimum standard is.
No.
It's the minimum standard to pass the course.
With the best case scenario. So that means your
Sure,
best.
but that's still a minimum standard.
For your best students, not for your worst.
It's still a minimum standard.
For your best students, not for your worst. Your worst students need more time.
I'm gonna interject. Alex is gonna say minimum. Danny's gonna say maximum.
Any program will look at that and say, "This is all I need to do."
I think Danny just argued both sides.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
You gotta pick a side.
Do not go down that hole. Like you're getting sucked into a black hole. We've gone crazy before. You don't need to go down that hole.
Real quickly, I think that our first course that we should be certifying divers in is supervised diver. Go ahead, discuss.
Did that last time.
I think Nicole jumped that.
I watched
last
that
time.
episode.
She did a very good job on that. I don't think I need to discuss
agree
this.
100% with Nicole.
You were just trying to derail this entire thing. I'm going to mute your ass in a second.
Yeah, that's what the mute button is for.
Yeah.
Is there one?
There's a mute button, yeah. And I can console you guys, but I let you guys fight it out a little bit. More people stay if you guys fight it out. And then we get the first timers like Ed and Kevin that just sit there quietly because they don't know what to do.
Yeah, we're trying to pick our battle here.
So
we
what's
are.
stopping us from making like ultra scuba schools?
Ultra.
Like, because
They used to have them.
we somebody talked about trade school and how scuba can't ever be like that. But why? Why can't scuba be like
Because
trade school?
scuba-
Because scuba is not like welding. We talked about that before.
Yeah,
And
a bad
actually-
weld just falls apart. A bad scuba instructor kills people.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know much about welding, but you have a lot of liability on your hands.
It sounds like scuba.
See you guys later.
Bye, Danny. Thanks.
I think what you have, it's a unique sport. Okay, so like if you have a baseball player, you have a football player, like mainstream athletes, right? You can see a player and you're like, damn, that guy's good, right? In scuba, it's so much to interpretation, but regardless of the class, where one person might think that's passing, another instructor might think not good enough, do it again. So there's a lot of gray area. I mean, you even see it in there might be one or two egos in the sport as well, where you have a lot of instructors that think their way is the best way, right? Their equipment of choice is the best equipment of choice, right? I mean, you see it all the time. And honestly, it's stupid. And that's where the standards come in, but they're open to that instructor's interpretation, and that's going to go from top to bottom, ground up, right?
And if we ever get to go to Dima again, I'm going to buy you a beer.
I will take that beer.
I really like what you just said.
He's actually empty on his beer right now. If you could Venmo it across, that'd be
MB, grab me
greatly
a beer.
appreciated.
I got the kegerator going. You can just pull one out of the kegerator.
We have the MB kegerator. He's
Yes,
giving
we
us
do.
beer.
So,
Take a Lake
Nicole, to
Phoenix
come
beer.
back to your point, like about why we can't create these trade schools. I mean, some of these trade schools,
Not that beer.
used to exist or maybe existed at one point, but have definitely fallen by the wayside. And I think it's largely because it's the investment that people are willing to make,
So that's true.
and then the money that they're going to get and the repercussion, like on the other side of it, right? Like not everybody has that amount of money just to burn and then become a professional for the actual quality that's really needed in order to develop that sort of individual. And the industry doesn't do a very good job at promoting its own value.
No.
When you look in Florida and people are selling $99 courses, right? Inherently, you are undermining the value of the training when you would spend $99 for an hour-long wind sailing lesson.
Yeah.
Right?
If I did welding, I'd probably be more rich than this bullshit.
If you're going to take a golf lesson, you're going to pay $150 for an hour.
So hold on, James. So
like scuba, we have sold the fact to scuba instructors around the world that they should be content making $10, $15,
Yep.
$5, $2 an hour in some cases, and be happy with it.
I want to put a pin on that just for a second. So one of the things, if we want to go back to something like welding, or Nick, you brought up medicine, right? So a lot of these people, they have to go through training first, right? You go through a class and learn how to do it, and then you have to go to a mentorship afterwards, right? So what we would be comparing that to in our industry is if somebody had to go through their ITC, and then afterwards, maybe they are an instructor. When somebody graduates medical school, they're technically a doctor, but they can't work in a hospital. They have to go through 4 years of residency, right? So it's like making the comparison that after somebody gets their instructor certification, they actually want to work in a dive shop. They have to go through an X amount of time working at a dive shop for free or whatever, right? Gaining experience before they.
I don't like that part.
I
liked everything you said, except
an instructor sounds
all I'm doing is making a comparison, right?
Yeah. Well, for me to become a teacher, I had to pay a university for me to go teach at a public school for a semester.
Yeah.
Any profession where you have a job that is considered, where you're a professional, requires X amount of schooling and a certain amount of apprenticeship. Even like hairdressers, we go back to doctors, welders. Technically, we call ourselves dive professionals. We're not, right? We are. The way the industry treats it is if we're dive clerks. We're no better than.
How much does a scuba instructor in England make?
Though actually, it's been so long, I don't know.
Nothing. They make nothing.
So that's
not always the case. That's not always the case.
They're so fly that they're doing what they love, and they should be happy doing that. Where in reality, you're right. A hairdresser's making 10 times what a scuba instructor makes. You know what?
But we're
10 to 100 times whatever of what a scuba instructor makes. But I mean, what is the harm in making instructors better to put out better students?
Here's the harm.
Saying that we don't ever want to see another instructor that's standing and kneeling on the bottom ever again to make that something that we want. What's the harm? The agencies don't make more money because the instructors aren't making money. Nick was talking about a $99 scuba class, right? And we can laugh and joke about how little money per hour that is to the instructor. But you got to remember, of that $99, if that goddamn instructor is lucky, he's getting 50 of it.
Mm-hmm.
Probably 25. So $25 for what? 25 hours of instruction over the course of a couple of 4-hour pool sessions, couple of 2, 3, 4-hour days of diving. You make what, $2 an hour? And we're happy with this? Like, what the hell is going on? Like, why are we content with that in the scuba world?
To be fair, most of the agencies are trying to push towards teaching neutral. I mean, they're not doing a very good job of it, but at least they're trying.
They're teaching not as negative as we used to be. They're not teaching
better than we had. Marginal gains, brother.
Okay, but, I mean, this is something that we've been doing, like literally in the early 2000s. We were saying neutral buoyancy instruction should be mandatory, and we were laughed at for nearly 2 decades now. We were laughed at, like, get out of here. We don't need to be doing that. You don't know what you're talking about. Leave us alone. We have our business figured out. We were laughed at. And until all these new agencies started popping up in the mid 2000s, the late 2000s, 2010s, that were doing something different, oh, the bell rang to them because they realized they were losing market share, and they realized that they had to do that, not because it was the right thing to do. They were doing it because they were losing money and they were afraid to lose more of it.
So James, while I agree with a lot of your points, I don't think that last point is accurate, because I don't think any of the agencies are currently worried about losing money because their students aren't being taught neutral. And the only reason that I say that is because the amount of instructors that I know that don't teach neutral is far outweighs those of us, in this room that do. Right. And so I don't think we have that big of an impact yet to actually even begin to raise the hairs on the back of their neck. Now, it is the cool new thing to do, right? It's definitely got some cachet, and it's definitely a lot more scalable. I mean, and I'm not devaluing it in any way, because Alex and I are huge believers in teaching neutral buoyancy, right? You don't teach somebody to ride a bike with stabilizers with the mind that they never take the stabilizers off. Right, you teach somebody neutral so that they can actually learn how to problem solve and perform skills in the water while maintaining neutral buoyancy. You can't expect somebody to do that if they've only ever done it on their knees. So, but again, this comes from the top down. The only way that you're going to fix that is you have to train the trainers to have a certain level of expectation of their new instructor candidates, and then that has to be held. Then they have to be held accountable, and then held to that level. And then that then has to disseminate down, right? Because you're not just going to tell a whole bunch of old scuba instructors that now they need to teach neutral, because they're not making enough money to care. They're not going to change their ways, right?
Plus the way it was done for a long time.
There's a few people that are teaching that way. The from the top down, it's not taught. You go to an IDC. They're all on their knees on the bottom of the pool, and then they're going to the instructor trainer sitting there telling them that they need to train their classes neutrally buoyant now, while they're all in the IDC on their knees on the bottom of the pool.
Right, but the IDC. So here's the problem: is that the trainers, the very top level trainers, have to actually be taught by someone how to actually teach this.
They need to know how to dive.
Huh?
They need to know how to dive.
Yeah, 100%. Right. Right.
But I think that leads into the entire where my argument is that we should put the floodgates before instructor and start to actually hold some people accountable before they get into our instructor system, because I think it's just I agree it's top down, but I think we can put a floodgate in and be like, okay, let's put a stopgate in here and say, you can't get into these courses until you can master these skills as a prerequisite to getting into these classes, to then be able to be developed to be really good instructors, to then become, those are the people that become course directors and ITs. And you said IC for you, Nick, and Alex, IC for your, yeah.
So I still don't understand why.
That stopgate that you're talking about is simply, they need to be good divers.
Right.
They need to be good in the water. They need to be pretty to look at. They need to be mesmerizing to look at.
Come on, not everybody can be me, James.
They need that. Yes, they need to look blonde hair.
Yeah.
Well, Jason's fucked then.
Yeah.
And that was a no hair joke.
It was a no hair joke.
But why are we putting
harm in that for the industry?
Why are you putting
is the standard? Where's the harm in that?
Why are you putting the gate in front of the students and not the instructors for who they pass and don't pass?
It has to be in all the different areas, but we need to establish a. So the way I do it is, okay, you want to be a dive master or instructor. Let's come in, let's meet, and let's go dive and make sure that you can actually achieve neutral buoyancy and do some damn skills the way you're supposed to do skills.
And if you can't, then what?
Then you need to go practice and then come back to me when you're ready.
You charge private instruction.
Yeah,
but what you could use your mentorship.
Nicole, the downside is you might actually get paid to teach someone.
Well, that's why I think that this should just be a bigger, better course, and
the way I'm going back to it is, okay, you said there's an issue that these people have never been able to do dives on their own, and they're going into an instructor course or dive master or dive professional. My response is, hey, go do some diving on your own, practice some stuff. We can reconvene.
They're not going to learn on their own because nobody's there to watch them and tell them what they're doing wrong.
I agree with Nicole.
That's why we have the social dive programs where our instructors and dive masters go out
Well,
and
not
dive
everybody
with them.
has a social dive program.
Maybe they should.
Why not?
I don't know, but they need a mentor. I think we agree
Right.
on that.
Well,
Yep.
I think it goes back to, we've said it a few times about having a mentoring program. I think it was Nick that had mentioned kind of having that dive community around, your location specifically. And if you are bringing up divers, like they're going to fall into the methods that you teach. And if they're not doing that, then I think it was Danny that said there's like 2 or 3 surviving boats and you couldn't get on boats years ago. Well, guess what? You can't get on boats now because we're filling boats.
Mhm.
Like that's what it is
Yeah.
now. I don't know where the problem is, but I think you sometimes got to look inward and say, is my training style right? Am I mentoring these people right? Are they going to be the kind of dive master, instructor, assistant instructor, whatever they want to be, to where you're okay with them either working for you or putting your name on that card to send them off and work for somebody else? And that goes for wherever they want to do their dives. If they're getting on boats, great. If they just want to dive at Dutch Springs, that's okay too. I'm not going to tell them not to, right?
Somebody
I don't
asked.
think any issue with training somebody that just is on a cruise and wants to go to 30 feet and look at some pretty fishies and doing a quick, simple, easy class. There's nothing wrong with that. And there should be a program available for that. The problem that I see so often is we're handing these people a certification that gives them something to do way beyond their ability. And it shows up with every single person on this panel tonight. Talks about they come to a professional level and they have an embarrassing level of ability in the water. So they're 2 completely different avenues of instruction, and that should be identified early on. And if you want to do basic handheld diving, that's fine. If you want to learn to become a diver and expect to grow, you've got to be a diver. You can't be a guy or gal who has scuba equipment so they can breathe underwater and look at fishies. You need to be a diver, and they're 2 completely different ball games.
John in the comments wrote, "You're doing something better, but how do you get consumers to pay more for it?" So if we have these great schools and we want to improve this instructor development program, why should your customer pay more for this better training? And I'll just tell you that when I came out of my IDC and I became an instructor, I probably could have killed somebody in 6 different ways that was expected of me, but not covered during my IDC. So I was expected to plan these trips, and I knew nothing about planning group travel to third world countries and organizing hotels. But I did it. I survived the first couple, but that was expected of me. I was expected to help people with their gear when they're assembling their gear, and sometimes they had equipment that I didn't know anything about, and I gave them advice on it. And that wasn't covered in my IDC. And what else? How else could I have killed somebody? I could have killed somebody, and I was expected to fill air, to fill cylinders at a compressor. And the first time I did it, I had no idea what I was doing. And these are all things that are expected of me, and it was not covered. It's not in the standards, and this is why it should be a trade
communications issue.
Yeah, that's exactly why I use the Gareth Locke stuff when we start talking about human factors and clarifying and just culture and being able to speak up for situations. I would much rather have someone tell me that they can't do something, and I try to foster that environment either in the hospital where I work or in the dive shop, is say, hey, listen, if you don't understand how to do something, I need you to speak up and tell me, and I'd be more than happy to teach you how to do it so that we can, work together on it. And there's no shame in not having the answer. And I think that's one of the big issues coming out of the IDCs is that everybody, as Danny was saying, beats their chest coming out of instructor development courses. I am the all-knowing instructor behind the curtain. Like, I should know every single thing about this sport. I should know every single thing and be the expert where it's okay not to know.
Hey, just don't pull the curtain, Jason.
Do you think that every instructor course should teach people how to run a compressor and fill tanks?
Definitely.
Does anybody here think that an instructor course shouldn't teach that?
Well, you're not going to get it in 10 days, dude. But
But don't you think that how many of you have ever filled at a without knowing how to? Because I have seen many people go up to the compressor and be like, oh crap.
So that gets into like a DOT gray area and Department of Health stuff. Like you have to be trained for
Jason,
for the stuff.
Too is like, are we going to make diving as real as any other trade or not?
And we should.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
That's
We should. Damn
yeah.
right.
How many times did I drive my car with
Maybe that much
cylinders?
work to get into if you want to get into it professionally, no doubt about it. If you want to go on a cruise ship and hold the dive master's hand in 30 feet of water, fine, do a weekend class. I get it, but don't hand somebody a card that tells them that they can go become a real diver. It's two different things.
Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the OSHA regulation that you have to be trained on the station that you're going to be operating within?
Right, exactly.
So
Yeah,
the compressor
within
was just an example.
I thought it was
The
90.
compressor-
You're right. You're 99. Yeah.
The compressor was an example, but
Right, but that's an
it was-
OSHA issue of like it's part of the IDC, but not necessarily. So as soon as someone
Were
gets
you-
employed in the dive shop, then
Were
they
you
have
guys
to
taught?
Responsibility.
Were any of
Not
you
the training
formally taught how to transport cylinders in your vehicle?
My training was shit.
So none
So,
of you,
like-
all of you are dive professionals, but nobody was formally taught how to transport cylinders in a vehicle.
Yeah,
I
and
think
I
we
don't
need-
want
we-
anyone to go
the-
through that again.
There needs to be a demarcation here on this topic. Are we talking about just being an instructor, or are we now talking about doing dive ops? Because
And there's
dive ops generally covers what we're
Yeah.
talking about right now, which is, okay, fill tanks, transport, VIPs, hydro, and then all
Right.
that other stuff.
So if you're a dive master with us, essentially you go through the air fill station operator class. You can go through a VIP class. You can go through blending classes, advanced blending, trimix blending. Like we discussed that, but you're not doing a damn thing until you're trained in it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's like a completely different scenario of,
Same.
and that's what our hope is. So you see John Hahnemann chiming in. He's in the dive master candidate situation right now. So he comes 2 or 3 days a week. He's going through like air fill station operator, how to move tanks around, how to deal with tanks, how to fill tanks. We talk a little bit about how to fill nitrox and trimix, but we're not at that point yet. But all of it's kind of thrown at him, so it's not quite a fire hose effect. And then he goes into real dive master candidacy slightly after that. But it's a mentor program, right? So it's a little bit different than these. You go to Florida and you become a dive master. Those are two very different things we're talking about. And that's why I say putting like a blockade in before dive master, or especially for like just general skill sets of, if we can bite off more of the general skill sets before getting into accepting someone into a program. I had prerequisites to go into respiratory therapy school. I needed anatomy and physiology. I was teaching anatomy and physiology without actually taking anatomy and physiology to high school students. Then I took anatomy and physiology. When I was taking anatomy and physiology, the assignments I was giving my students in grading was the same ones that I was doing for my anatomy and physiology class. So that was my prerequisite to get into respiratory therapy school, at which point I had to do 7 semesters of clinical before I was allowed to then mentor with somebody and eventually after 6 months get to the ICU.
And I think that's where if you look at how scuba instructorship is taught, there is no guaranteed mentoring or guaranteed after the fact. I mean, you know what? I understand the standards. I know there needs to be standards.
Right.
Again, they are minimum. So you cover those, and then what do you do after that? Do you then say, okay, you know what? You know your skills, but you don't know everything about it. So continue on, find somebody you really enjoy working with, and that's really going to take you to that next level. I mean, how often does that happen?
Mentoring at the instructor level would elevate our community tenfold.
Agreed. 100%.
Agreed.
Yeah. I think mentoring before, I think basically the idea of the standards prior to coming in, or the prerequisites prior to coming in, go in, do a pre-assessment, find out where the student needs remediation before entering an IDC if you can, and then go through. And I think Brock was talking about making AI required. And I'm not sure whether that solves the problem or just kind of puts a Band-Aid over and just puts another layer into the issues we're having. But creating some sort of requirement, getting in, and then mentoring on the other side. So have have floodgates on both sides to make sure that we are truly training people appropriately, then creating really, really good instructors who are producing really good students who truly understand the business of this thing of making open water a loss leader is probably not one of our best cases for keeping people in the sport.
No. So, I mean, to speak to that, Jason, that's all accurate. But the biggest hurdle that this mentality has to overcome, like this philosophy has to overcome, is the fact that currently the industry is driven by cert numbers, not cert longevity. And that's the mind shift that needs to happen, right? The mind shift that needs to happen is that it doesn't, like, I don't want 100 open water certifications a year. I would much rather have 10 open water certifications a year, but see each one of those individuals mentored up through, specialized training and up to a professional level. But the problem is a lot of these shops, especially the ones in warmer climates, don't really have that opportunity to do that mentor style. And then to speak to James's point, their idea and concept of entry-level certification is the open water course. And I'm going to say, I agree with James. Like, the open water course technically isn't the entry-level certification. It should be, if you want to go diving in the Caribbean over the course of a weekend, fine. Then you do a scuba diver program.
A supervised diver program?
Supervised diver program.
Oh my God.
Now you did it.
Did you just come
Oh,
up with
there we go. We're done.
No, we're not talking.
Oh, no.
That's
We're not
genius.
talking about lowering the standards. We're saying that the
That was genius.
the program that's presented right now is that course.
Right.
Oh, I agree.
And that mindset needs to change, right? And you're never gonna get the industry to lean in the direction that we're all leaning unless you can change the overall philosophy, at that baseline level of, I'm not looking for the most amount of students I can teach. I'm looking for a group of students of which I can then culture up. But that relationship has to be created to the travel locations, and they have to be able to create still their profit and that money moving through so that they still exist, right? You can't cut them out and tell them they're shit. They're not. Right. The problem is they're teaching the wrong program. Correct. They could be able to charge more for that experience, put in less, reduce their overall liability, and if they can send them back to somewhere that they've actually got a relationship with, like in local diving, or at least a resource to send them to, then the places of which they could spend significant periods of time then culturing up those skills, and under a mentorship program, when they come back, they're going to be even better, and they're going to spend more money on boat dives, and they're going to spend more money on these trips and on these liverboards, right? Like the whole mentality has to shift away from teach open water divers to mentorship in places where people live and experience level programs in where people travel. And then they have to talk
to building real divers. Jason, like conversations like this, I literally could go all night. I apologize.
I know. I'm giving us 2 more minutes. I'm cutting us all off. So
these are good, fun things. It's a matter of what is the industry content with, building more open water divers for numbers, like you were saying, or are we gonna stand up and say, no, how about we build real divers that are long term? I think that's where I'm going to close off.
All right. Well, I think to that point, to the neutral buoyancy training, to all that, they respond to what is new and hot and sexy, and that's what the neutral buoyancy, that's where the direction it's going. And that's the problem we used to have, is that a lot of people would come in and go, you're a shit instructor because you're not teaching neutral buoyancy, as opposed to, hey, look, this is how I do it. I think it's a better way. Do you want to try some things? I'll help you do that. That's a much better way of handling it. And that's the issue we've had over years of being like, I've fought the neutral buoyancy fight, but I've also taken the middle ground and going, listen, you're not a shit instructor. I don't care what so-and-so said. You're not shit. There's just a different way of doing things. Like, let's look at it. Let's see what works for you. Maybe try some things. But there's so many people that come on a soapbox and go, you're rubbish and you can't teach because you're not doing these things. I think that mentoring program. What?
Yeah,
Nice. So I think there's a better way. I think making the increased requirements sexy. I mean, the number of people that come to me for, and even you, James, the neutral buoyancy for the instructor training stuff. I know Alex and Nick, you guys have done a bunch with the neutral buoyancy stuff of making that like this is where we want to go. Like, look at us. We're proud of this. This is the product we're producing. I want to see that as a prerequisite, not really prerequisite, but like a way we can say, hey, you want to come into my instructor development program? Not a problem. Let's work on a weekend together of really putting you through it to make sure you're going to be ready and excited and to go.
I mean,
and it's worked.
Imagine Jason going on like taking some instruction from like a world class like backcountry mountain biker, and he's got training wheel or like Nick said, stabilizers on his bike, right? And riding down these trails.
Yep.
I mean, that's what we're doing as scuba instructors, like on our knees. No, like neutral buoyancy is not a specialty class. It's first thing in learning to enjoy the three-dimensional world we want to be part of. It's the first thing you need to know, not a class after a class.
I agree, and I disagree at the same time. Advanced buoyancy, I think the way it
doesn't have to be advanced buoyancy.
Okay.
Neutral buoyancy. Learning
neutral buoyancy. Yeah.
You got to stay off the bottom, not negatively buoyant, is not a specialty class. It's being part of the underwater world. It's
and then advanced buoyancy being beyond that and more skills and more task loading is what you're saying.
Hold on, James. I would make the argument that one of the biggest reasons why people don't teach neutrally buoyant isn't because they can't dive neutral. It's because they can't control a group of students who are
right, because they don't know what they're doing yet.
They need to be taught how to do that, right? That's a skill set that they need to be taught how to do.
Oh my God. Yeah. It takes work. They gotta work at it.
Somebody's supposed to teach that to them, right? Like we're supposed to be taught how to do these things, not just figure them out on our own.
Right.
Oh, it takes work. It takes
and that's that mentoring program.
Yeah.
Commitment.
And so my argument with
craft, a dedication to the art, a passion for it, not just willing to be the lowest common denominator you can be, just so you can make a couple bucks doing what you want to do to fund your bill for fucking nitrox bills.
I think that's unfair to a lot of the instructors out there. I think they just seriously don't know any better and don't know how to do.
I know they don't because they've been lied to themselves. I feel bad for them. You're right. They don't know. They think being on their knees with 10 open water students clearing masks is totally normal. That's my point. That is a major problem in this industry.
It's not a problem with them, though. It's a problem with the people who are creating them.
Right.
You're right. Yeah. No doubt about it. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah. And my idea with my push on the prerequisite thing and really holding people accountable beforehand is like we were all talking. We only have so much time in the IDC. There's only so much time. Can we take care of it in those number of days? Can we do this? Can we do that? If they came in at a higher level, then we have more time in the IDC to cover more things because there's less remediation happening at the beginning.
There you go. You just solved it, Jason.
No, I didn't. I didn't solve jack shit. I just caused more arguments.
I'm leaving. I gotta go.
Yes.
It's lasted too long. Hey, thank you a lot for having me again. It's
thanks for coming, James.
All right, see you guys. Take care.
Nick's trying to make it sexy.
Bye, James.
Nick's bringing sexy back. See you, James.
Yeah.
All right. I think closing arguments are in order because we still have 50 people hanging out with us for an hour 45, which is shocking to me. Ed and backwards hat Kevin, who lost his hat. Jay and Silent Bob, whatever you guys want to be called, you jackasses. What's your closing argument since you didn't talk at all?
Get him, Kev. Okay, you really want me to talk? Okay, fine, I'll talk.
Not really.
Okay, well, you know what? A lot of prerequisites. At some point, we need to really make the IDCs and the IEs really reflective of the real world, and maybe not just say, okay, you know what? This is exactly the way you have to do it. Maybe, as you said, you know what? A lot of these issues are coming out of people being told, boom, you have to do it this way. You are being assessed this way. And therefore, you don't do it this way, you fail. And I think that needs to change. Additionally, the frontside instructor or whoever's taking the candidates under their wing need to do some of their own homework and really look into as to whether or not this person is really prepared to be a good instructor.
Okay. Fair enough. Ed, do
It's
you
a
have anything you
mentor.
need to add?
I'm going to go back to my original point, and we said probably the word mentor 100 different times tonight. You know, it
97.
you counted. That's great. It really is a mentor program. I mean, if you want to turn out instructors, cut them. Go by Danny's minimum standard there and cut them the cards. If you want to make good instructors, then take them under your wing and show them what a good instructor would do, and make sure that they fit that standard. You can go by the minimum. It's like any other class, right? There's the minimum standard to pass, but then you can also add in your instructor interpretation to let them know what your real expectations are. Now, unlike the Caribbean style, we don't have the luxury of doing usually 10 classes in a week or 50 DSDs in a week, so they can knock out all those experiences. But it's our job over a season or so to make sure that they get that quality educational time with students to where they know what your standards are and how to make themselves better. And then when you put them into an IDC, it's a piece of cake. And when they send them to an IE, they're the top of the class, and they're not stuttering on other briefs, and they're not missing stuff in the pool. Like the IE, and you know what? I'm going to go back a little bit.
All right,
Because
closing arguments. Come on.
Closing argument, final argument. The IE, I'm just going to throw it out there. The IE was a joke. There you go. I'm going to say it. Mic drop that. I'm going muted on that, baby.
See ya. All right, Nicole. Nicole, closing arguments. Let's make it shorter than Ed and Kevin did. I had two people, but
All right. Two things real quick. One, make scuba school cool again. Seriously, our profession is a serious one, and it should be treated as such. We should demand the same responsibility and competency out of the people in our profession as we do out of doctors or somebody else, because we're taking amateurs and beginners underwater, and we got a lot of responsibility, both underwater and as dive professionals, and we should get educated properly before we put into those tough situations, because I don't know many people who were prepared to, step up and become dive professionals. It was kind of a learn as you go kind of thing, and that should not exist in scuba. We should be better prepared. And on the same note, the education should not be one size fits all, because people have different interests, and it's kind of like a cookie cutter program right now. But the professionals that come out are so different from each other. Some of us are going to be teaching 8 people at a time in the Caribbean, and the other ones are going to be doing, backplate and wing here in the Northeast, and we're all going through the same program. It doesn't make much sense, and so we need just better quality training that fits all the diverse professionals and actually really prepares them. Even if that means that we have to pay more for the training, I guess that just means that the industry needs to, change in a big way.
love it. All right, thank you. All right, Alex, closing arguments in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. One, we should be preparing instructors to be prepared to come out and not be great. Be prepared to come out and continue to learn. That has a lot to do with the mindset that we teach these people. And I think you can agree, like introducing human factors early on with those students will help with that, right? To understand that every teaching situation is an opportunity for them to continue to get better. We should put more emphasis on the dive centers where they end up working, that it's their responsibility to continue to grow these people and not just turn and burn them, which is one of the things that does happen at a lot of dive centers. And if your expectation is that somebody's going to come out of an instructor course, especially if they're not local to your area that you're going to be teaching, that they're going to need help and they're going to need work and they're going to need guidance. And that's what should be happening. And then the last one is that being a good diver doesn't make a good instructor. All right. You can have great instructors that are great divers, and most of them have to be, but they also learn how to be good at teaching. Teaching is a skill in itself. And if you don't teach them how to do that part of it right, just being good at diving doesn't get the whole thing done. And I think those are the points that really matter. And prerequisites are useless. All right, cool. Cool.
Thanks, Alex. Nick, closing thoughts? Anything to add there?
Last man standing, baby.
I know,
Woo!
right? Just like
I mean,
Vegas.
I would, yeah, right. I would mirror most of Alex's thoughts, to be fair. And really, kind of the last main points would just be the industry has to shift its mindset. It needs to understand that the entry level program isn't something to be given away in 2 days. It needs more work to make people rounded and more comfortable. And there are other programs we can substitute for that and still give the people on vacation a very similar, if not as good experience. And then leave the mentorship to those who are going to be within a particular area, no matter where it is, for a long period of time, so they have time to develop those relationships and grow and become better in the water, right? Prerequisites, we all know, mean nothing for the most part. Like, you can have 100 dives in Thailand in 20 feet, and you could have 100 dives in New England in 100 feet, right? They're not the same thing. And because they're not defined, they don't hold a lot of value, at least, when you've got somebody coming into a program. And then to echo your thoughts earlier, having, stop gates at each level to check on people's level of qualification and then bring them up to the necessary speed before they progress makes so much more sense than waiting until they get to instructor and then trying to jam them through a 10-day course and be like, here's your certificate, well done, you can sell X agency and mention whatever 3 times, check, cool, have a good time, enjoy $10 an hour in the Caribbean.
Nice. Thanks. All right. Peace. All right. Thank you very much, guys. As always, if you jump on the YouTube, you're going to see a follow button over here at the end of this whole thing. And Patreon, I just posted a link in the comments. Anything you can do to help out is appreciative. We pay a fair amount for StreamYard and a couple other items, and it helps keep this kind of program going. As always, we've had a lot of discussion. We didn't solve much of anything, but we've created more discussions. So we should have more shows. And that's the whole idea, is that we can keep talking. So thank you very much. I appreciate everything. I appreciate you guys sticking around. And I'm shocked that we're close to 2 hours and we still have everybody we had when we started for the most part. So thank you. Have a wonderful night and be good.